The Wyoming Senate votes to completely eliminate funding for major school construction projects. Ranchers accused of bleaching obscene shapes onto their neighbors' cows are headed back to court. And the whole world watched as wolves strolled down the boardwalks near Old Faithful Thursday morning. We'll take a look at these stories and more today from Wyoming's largest news organization. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily. On two close votes, the Wyoming Senate voted Thursday to cut the entire $111.8 million budgeted over the next 2 years for major school construction projects. State Representative Landon Brown of Cheyenne likened the approach to performing surgery with a bludgeon instead of a scalpel, according to Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson.
The primary reason they rejected it on a very narrow 16-15 vote was because of the processes that were used to select 2 of the 7 schools that ended up getting across the finish line for this, schools in Jackson and Rock Springs. And they felt like the Select Committee on School Facilities used a little bit of an unfair procedure that they don't typically use in the rules to select these schools.
The Senate decision will hold serious ramifications for the remainder of the legislative session as the House voted to approve the school construction projects. A bill allowing Wyoming to organize its own state militia passed through to the Senate floor Tuesday. But Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines spoke to firearms instructor and private security expert Bill Talon of Cody, who said any state guard would be organized with a chain of command and wouldn't be just a bunch of guys with guns.
People hear the word militia, they think of a bunch of guys getting together with their rifles and dressed up in camouflage. It's not that. It would basically be an extension of the Wyoming National Guard. It would be under the governor's command and governor's authority.
Talon had traveled to Cheyenne this week, prepared to testify in favor of Senate File 106, but the Senate Appropriations Committee voted unanimously to forward the proposal to the full Senate with a do-pass recommendation. Well, after a judge dismissed his earlier attempt at the case, a Crook County prosecutor is refiling charges against 2 Wyoming ranchers accused of bleaching the shapes of male genitalia onto their neighbors' cows. Although the charges were dismissed without prejudice late last year, meaning the prosecutor could bring it again if there was additional evidence, Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that this time there is more evidence of lost value.
Over the past few months, the heifers that were bleached reportedly got to stay on the ranch instead of getting sold. And the new affidavit calculates the cost of keeping about 200 extra cows all winter and the calving that they'll have in the spring. And all of that stuff is tallied to better support those high-level property destruction claims.
Patrick and Tucker Carroll were scheduled to appear in court last week, but now are rescheduled for a March 19th hearing. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Are you fabulous at 55? Are you ready to use your valuable time and talent to give back? Join Serve Wyoming through the AmeriCorps Seniors Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, or RSVP, and make a positive impact on your community. With a lifetime of skills and experiences, you're exactly what your community needs. Whether you're itching to lend a hand or your organization could use some extra support, we've got you covered. Call Sarah Roberts at Serve Wyoming at 307-234-3428 or RSVP at servewyoming.org.
The Wyoming House passed an amendment late Wednesday night that would tie the sale of a pristine section of state land in Teton County to the National Park Service to the fate of the BLM's controversial Rock Springs management plan. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson was at the legislature late Wednesday night when the amendment was finalized.
I spoke to Representative Clark Stiff, who is the bringer of the amendment. He's a Rock Springs Republican. And he said this just kind of gives a more of a kind of political poker chip to give the state in its negotiations with this parcel and kind of getting what it wants with the BLM, kind of killing 2 birds with one stone, if you will.
The Kelly parcel is adjacent to Grand Teton National Park and has been recommended for public auction by the Office of State Lands and Investments. The proposed Rock Springs management plan could cause a roughly $1 billion economic hit to the Rock Springs area. And lovers of Yellowstone National Park and wolves lit up Thursday morning as live webcam feeds showed a pack of wolves running along the boardwalks through the Upper Geyser Basin near Old Faithful. Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi reports that Kathy Schmidt, a volunteer operating the webcam feed, caught sight of the predators and zoomed in on the unusual gathering.
They spotted at least 12 wolves who just wandered into the Upper Geyser Basin where Old Faithful is. And instead of just spreading out across the landscape, they walked along the boardwalk. And once they got to the hill where Old Faithful's located, they just sort of hung out.
Schmidt is one of a dozen volunteers who operate the Old Faithful webcam, a remotely operated high-def camera that captures and live streams anything interesting going on in the Upper Geyser Basin. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the subscribe button on CowboyStateDaily.com. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.